proceed with the order. Okay, you got room?
Yes.
You got enough room there, you
I
sure? Or-
think I'll be able to figure it out.
This little wall's kind of bugging me. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
There you go.
I don't know, I feel like... Sorry. Thanks, Kirsten.
Yeah.
Okay, are we on? Oh, okay. I will now call the hearing to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning I'll be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. On my second left, it's different, is Ms. Billinghurst. On my far left is Mr. Terrian. The assessor representing the Assessment and Taxation Department is Ms. Caldwell, and our secretary today is Ms. Hatterson. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit the discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration, and makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And can everybody please make sure their cell phones are on silent, please. Kelsey, could you swear in the assessor?
I just realized I do not have a Bible. Do you
Affirm.
affirm? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Neufeld, Ms. Caldwell. First property on the docket today is 1725 Inkster Boulevard, and we're dealing with the 2020 Realty Appeal. Ms. Caldwell, when you're ready, please. Take your time.
All right. Okay, this is roll number 1406131-600, 1725 Inkster Boulevard. For the roll year 2020, we have an assessed value of $23,414,000. We have an effective age of 1990. There are 9 premises in the building. Wall height of 26 feet. Construction class is masonry bearing walls. It's zoned M2, general manufacturing. The land area is 556,506 square feet. Plan area 267,721 square feet. Land to plan area is 2.08. And I'll just take you through the brief quickly. You'll see on page 2 of the brief that there are 4 subject leases. And the next couple of pages, you'll see some exterior photographs. And some aerial photographs as well. Going to page 8, we have our cap rate chart. You'll see that our industrial rates, 60% of our industrial cap rates fall between 6.34 and 7.80. We also have lows of 5.5 and highs of 9.80. And on the following page, page 9, this property actually has 2 income streams, so I'll just go through both income streams, starting with, there is a taxable portion and exempt portion, so this is the taxable portion of the property. It's a flex standard warehouse with a total leasable area of 192,962 square feet, broken into several business premises. We have a vacancy law set at 3.5%. Non-recoverable expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75. We have a model cap rate of 6.5%, bringing us to our income stream value of $17,365,000. Following on the next page, this is the exempt portion. This is WRHA occupies this space. We have 74,760 square feet at a rent of $5.70. Vacancy loss of 3.5%, expenses at 2%, shortfall rate of $3.75, cap rate of 6.5%, to give a value of $6,049,000. And if you turn to page 11, you'll see the 2 income streams together. Income stream 1 is the taxable. Income stream 2 is the exempt portion. And the summary on the left-hand side shows the 2 income streams together for the full value of $23,414,000. Then on page 12, I have some rental comparables. All my rental comparables are in the subject region. Similar land to plan ratio with rents from $5.75 to a high of $7.25 to support our model-driven rent rates. And so I asked the board to confirm our value today at $23,414,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Yes. Have you inspected the property?
Yes, I have.
Pardon me?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time of your inspection, what was the vacancy?
The vacancy, they've had a vacancy issue, about 23% vacancy since 2014. I do have a recommendation to address the vacancy portion of that.
Oh.
But I'm sure that I'll give you my recommendation for that. I don't think it'll be accepted overall, because that's all that I was.
Oh, maybe you got reasons to be pessimistic.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'll certainly look at it.
Okay.
And
So-
would you like to present
Okay.
that now?
Sure.
Do you have copies for the board?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. You wouldn't mind handing those
Sure.
out, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You wouldn't mind going through that and
Sure.
and explaining what's being revised here, please?
Sure. To address the vacancy issue of 20, it's been vacant 23% consistently since about 2013. We address vacancy when there's a chronic vacancy issue. We typically use 25% is our maximum vacancy for 100% vacancy. So for this, I use the 23% times 25%, which is about 6% vacancy. So as you can see, the two top income streams, we have the full value of $23,414,000, and then with the vacancy adjustment at the bottom, it comes to $22,407,000.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld, any comments?
Well, I appreciate that you've looked in, or you've reviewed the vacancy, and we'll proceed onwards. I think it's the problem's a little bit bigger than that. So, other than this change on the vacancy, were the rest of the valuation based on your model?
Yes.
On the income and expense questionnaire that you've submitted on page 18 to 20, has any of this been modified at all?
The questionnaire?
Yes.
No. This was input by a user at their end, whether it be an accountant or they're usually when they do it online, yeah, there's no signature because they did it through the website. No, it hasn't been.
So to your knowledge, it hasn't been changed?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I'm just trying to make a very, very cautious statement here, but I have a different version, and there's some missing line items on it. And we printed ours off from the city's website. We didn't get it from the client. And there were some landlord's work, and that was put in, and we're showing an NOI, a negative NOI, and there was also an input on vacancy, which I see on your page 19, but I don't see it wasn't subtracted from the potential income.
We don't subtract vacancy.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. Like the way the statements are run is they do.
Yeah.
And but I did notice that the landlord's work line on the city one had changed, and as a result, all the numbers had changed, and everything else is identical. And as I said, I downloaded this from the city's website with the private ID. So again, just to your knowledge, are you presenting this as you feel you understand it was submitted?
Yeah, this is how it was downloaded from my site. Are you looking at this? Are we looking at the same income year?
Everything is the same, except there's one bit of a discrepancy on the application percent of vacancy, which I don't think is anything that was altered, but there's a line 215 was removed on actually the line below line 215. There was an item that isn't reported.
Oh, okay. I wonder if.
Do you want me to show you?
No, I believe you,
Okay.
but I'm wondering if, because when when they send a paper copy, we input that. I wonder if when they do it online, it doesn't. I don't know.
It may not part of the totalization.
Yeah, maybe. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into it in mine. I just in wondering if you'd noted that as well.
No, can you actually give me that total?
Well, yeah, and it's just you can see right below line 215, and I don't think it's important to our valuation. I was just concerned that there was a change between what
Okay.
was reported and what was brought here.
Okay. Is it maybe totaled in the non-recoverable expense? Or no?
No, it isn't. It
It isn't.
isn't.
Okay.
No, in regard to the non-recoverable expense, in this case, they claimed $83,656 in addition to $1.4 million in work done on the site. Did you calculate what percentage that is of their declared revenue? I'm getting 437. I'm getting 6%.
Okay, well, no, I didn't, because this is mass appraisal, and we don't typically,
I understand. I was just wondering, just to make sure we're on the, not disputing the numbers, that they are claiming 6% of non-recoverables. Thank you. The capitalization rate, is this also derived from your model?
yes.
Now, does your model account, to your knowledge, for the site being listed as a contaminated site?
No.
To your understanding, would the market react to that factor of it being contaminated?
Yes. So, are you saying this is a contaminated site?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But yes. I found on the registry this morning. And the capitalization rates that were applied, and you compared it to a number of industry reports that you've received, what is your understanding of the capitalization rates in the city of Winnipeg? Do you believe that they're competitive with the rest of Canada, or representative of other market indicators on a national basis?
I don't really look at the national basis.
Would you consider that Winnipeg is a better market than other provinces in Canada or other countries?
Better as,
A more competitive investment environment, more attractive to investors?
not necessarily.
Okay. Thanks. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Ms. Billinghurst, any questions of the assessor? Maurice, any questions?
I guess this, on page 2, it's a pretty old sale at 15-1. I guess you never looked into that, did you?
I didn't, no.
I'm just trying to get my head around the vacancy. It's just, I don't know if my brain is not working, but how does the 6% vacancy convert to the 23%? How'd you arrive at that figure?
Often, 25% is our max for 100%. If in a lot of them, if we applied 25%, it would bring it to below land value.
Okay.
So we use the 25% as our 100%. So you apply that 23% to 25%.
Oh, is that what you did? Okay. I was trying to get my head around it. I couldn't figure this one out. Okay. I thought that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, just to confirm, the recommendation is revising class code 60 to $60,627,000 and class code 40 school exempt to $5,780,000 equals $22,407,000.
That's correct.
Okay. And that reflects a application of a 6% vacancy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
10 seconds. It was just trying to figure out some. was just, I had some issues with the statement, and I just wanted to make sure I was clear on it. On page 3 is the statement that we downloaded from the city's website, and as you can see that there are some additional lines on it. There's a non-recoverable landlord work for $1.4 million. Now, the way this statement is prepared didn't translate correctly onto the city's electronic submission form. This statement is the type where they calculate the potential rent and then they subtract their vacancies. So they're declaring $1,394,370 is rental income, and that's potential rental income that's full. And I was just double checking the calculations on page 4. If you'll note that the 5 units that are rented generate $91,204 per month, which works out to $1,094,448 per annum. And then there's the 2 vacant suites, which add up to another $284.14 as potential rent, indicating our total potential rent of $1,394,370. So we began with that number as the potential rent, and sorry, I lost my front page. For some reason, it's transcribed as 1364, so I think we have to make an adjustment there. And the 23% vacancy, which has been in effect, as we both agree, for a fairly long time, we applied only at 12.5%. Because the minute you get past 15%, you actually change your highest and best use, and you have to be reconsidering it. And it's been a problem vacancy, but our opinion was that that eventually it'll get leased up, and it could be a problem vacancy in the future. But you don't take the entire 23%. You do have to give it a better allowance than 6%. And you don't have to go as deep as 23%. So we ended up at 12.5%. We did include management, which are non-recoverables. In this case, it worked out to $59,676, and their actual statement indicates $83,656. And that came us with an NOI of $984,481. As to capitalization, I do have some information. I think I can present this as rebuttal, as there's been enough foundation for it. Firstly, the site is listed on the contaminated database, Manitoba contaminated impacted sites. And there's another property today, and I put it on the same piece of paper. Hopefully we can recycle it that way. Can I pass them down this way? So you can see that the registration is actually the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, who occupy the bulk of the space, are listed under the impacted site. This will have a pronounced impact on the capitalization rate. The other issue is we haven't gone as deep as we should have, as we could have, on potential vacancies, costs, and we're merely dealing with that in terms of just a higher risk at filling it in the market. So we're using a rate of 8.25%. I asked also earlier about whether Winnipeg was a good global market, and this is a work in progress, and this will be included in our future reports. And this is for information only. So it's not for rates necessarily. It just shows Manitoba's position in the market, the North American market. Colliers became a fully owned subsidiary of Colliers International about a year and a half ago, and it took until a month ago for us to get computer access to all the Colliers deals. And normally what we had been submitting was the Collier's cap rate report, which I don't really care for because it's meant for the brokers and you got to explain too much in it. What we have now are access to the actual database that created this. And again, we're not going to use it for numerical evidence. There's a couple of highlights in here that you could I would point out to. These are the major markets in Canada that we have data for, which is BC, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec. Manitoba hasn't been put in the system, and Saskatchewan is not in the system, and we don't have affiliates in the Atlantic provinces. But in BC, you can see that the range there, and BC is the best market in Canada. Too much of it is based on appreciation of assets, but you can see that the range goes from 4.4 to 12.4%. It's like that old joke, just like downtown. We don't, I removed all lower mainland sales because they're based on appreciation and redevelopment of the land. And in these, there were no reported manufacturing sites. And Alberta had a range that was a little bit higher, and it's all oil-related sites. So if the oil business is hot, the cap rate will actually go up because the leases go up. You know, when the oil companies move in, they'll pay whatever they have to get a site. When the oil business is down, the leases go down, and so do the cap rates. So it's one industry town, and right now the period in question here was 17 and 18, which is a lull in the market. Ontario, same problem as BC in that we don't look at the Greater Toronto area because most of those purchases are not cap rate sales, they're land sales. But the range there is 5% to 10% real industrial. And Quebec, it's a slightly higher range, and most of their product is distribution based, and very little in the manufacturing field. We also looked at the United States. The states we looked at were the ones that shared similar economies as Manitoba, which would be a mixed economy, a lot of transport, a lot to do with raw materials, and these are the states. What was there, the rates were higher, and their markets are more aggressive than ours. And also see that we had reported manufacturing rates as well, which were significantly higher than the rest of the market. South Dakota, there was only one reported sale there, so that's all we had for South Dakota. North Dakota only had about 13 or 14. Michigan and Minnesota had several hundred sales. This is, I keep saying at these hearings that Manitoba is not a great market. Why did we think that these aggressive cap rates, that anyone pays attention to them? So I'm starting to lay the foundation for our future reports and present it as rebuttal. Mr. Chairman, may I just finish my rebuttal information so we don't have to do it all?
Yeah, and then we're going to have questioning by the assessor and the panel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, in regard to the management expense, I have a few documents. I'm just going to hand them out one at a time. As I've been saying, hearing upon hearing, is that accepted philosophy theory for appraisal and brokerage and everybody else in the world is management, non-recoverable, whatever you want to call it. This is an excerpt from a report done for a property owner. And in it was a review of current leases. Now, these are all post-reference deals, so we've just blocked them out. But take a look at the top line, the column, and the far right column header. Net effective rent with a 7% discount. So the brokerage department at Colliers deducts 7% for non-recoverables on their face rents to show to their clients is what their yield is. So this is a fairly strong indication that the world, the brokerage world relies on that. The appraisal world, this is an excerpts from the Appraisal Institute's textbook. And the second last paragraph, given that an amount for recoverable expenses is already included, is now appropriate to make a deduction for them as well as non-recoverable costs. So this is what we do, recoverable and non-recoverable. The non-recoverable, represented in the past by 5% and 2%, wasn't just a made-up number by the assessment department. This is a fairly accepted market-based valuation method. We call them different things, and just for an explanation of how we call them different things, this is an article by a U.S.-based appraiser, expenses on triple net leases. And I'm not going to read it to you, but somewhere in here it talks about how you look at, in this case they added non-recoverables, management, and maintenance, which is like replacement reserve. So the theory is all here, that this is what the world does for application of non-recoverables. And right now, the city is a bit on their own on this concept. There's also an excerpt in here, incidentally, from the IAAO. IAAO doesn't necessarily get into quantification, but it does describe that a modeler has to take those into account based on percentage may be determined by a market analysis of PGIs compared with actual income or from information supplied by local lenders and industry trade publications. So they're also directed to look at the market, and this is the market. Now, I understand that our request here is significantly lower than the previous year, and that's all due to the continued vacancy issue. And when we looked at this property 2 years ago, we were thinking that the vacancy problem would be short-lived, and nothing has happened in the 2 years since. So we now think we have to address it. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I didn't do this 2 years ago. This was represented by another company for the owner, and we were only there to make representation on the health authority for the laundry facility. So the previous agent had already accepted a recommendation from the city by the time we were involved, and we had no say in the matter. So I wouldn't have agreed with it back then. And now we're looking for this. So we're using actual income, and there is, as I mentioned, an issue with the statements that they weren't. We're not sharing the same number, but we've reviewed it. We have great confidence in our number, and we have a 5% management, as they call it, or non-recoverable, supported by actual experience, and capitalization rate based on continuing vacancy, which was not fully addressed in the vacancy risk, as well as it being listed on the Manitoba Contaminated Sites database, which is a detriment to investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, any questions on the rebuttal presentation from the appellant?
Okay, I'll start with the contaminated. So this is not contaminated. This is on the impacted site list?
That's the only list maintained today.
Because isn't there only 2 Winnipeg properties that are actually on the contaminated list?
Well, what happened about 2007 was that there was just a change in the terminology, and they stopped maintaining all the active files, and all these are listed. Now, this morning when I checked it, this was about a 20-page document of the database, and you can see the date was 2011. The federal government maintains another inventory of 1,400 sites of crown lands as well. So all of these are on the database, and the issue here being is if you're an investor, you're not going to ignore this. You're going to require phase 1, phase 2, and then your lender doesn't really care if you're on the list, the inventory, you're out there. So you're going to have issues getting mortgages. You're going to get poorer rates and lower ratios, which are going to drive up your cap rate because you'll recover the money somewhere. If you could normally qualify for a 4.5% mortgage, you're going to probably have to go to third-party lenders and get a 6.5% to 7% mortgage, which drives up your required rate of return on the investment. And that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, but you agree there's a difference between the contaminated and impacted sites?
Not from the real estate perspective. Once you've been besmirched with the paintbrush of contamination, there's no going back. It's on the record. It's permanently on your record.
Could anyone flag their property as contaminated and it could go on this list?
No, Manitoba Conservation runs this list.
So the property can still be used as is and could be used for similar practices, similar use?
Well, it can be used as is. There's no restriction on that. It'll be conversion to alternate uses will be difficult. For example, if you wanted to put a food processing unit in here, that would be difficult. If the site, and because of their location on the north side of Inkster, they abut residential neighborhoods. So if there was ever a contemplated expansion of the residential neighborhood, which is we've seen in other industrial neighborhoods, this site could not be considered for multifamily or single-family use.
You see multifamily or single family coming into Inkster here?
Yeah, they're butt up right behind it.
Yeah, but this,
So you wouldn't be able to see expansion onto it, like, in parts of we've all seen parts of our city being gentrified, and see properties go up, and where you don't see any residential go up is a site that has a contamination issue, because you won't get it'd be difficult to get approval, but you're not going to get a mortgage, and that's the key at all for residential. Now, some contaminated sites, if you continue on with your existing usage, are some of the silliest pollutions that have been solved. They say, just put 2 inches of blacktop on it, right? Which solves the open file with conservation. It doesn't solve the problem in the real estate markets, and that it's always on your record. You're part of your permanent record, as they say.
okay. Okay, I'll go to your expenses. I believe this. You said this is from. What was this from?
The Appraisal Institute.
Appraisal.
It's a textbook called BUSI 442.
Okay, and you mentioned the second last paragraph, deducting for expenses, recoverable expenses and already included as appropriated deduction for non-recoverable expenses.
The previous paragraph kind of outlines what those costs for us to consider are as well.
Okay, so the what are there's examples of non-recoverable expenses that we've seen in case law. Give examples of certain non-recoverable expenses. Have you including tenant landlord's work?
Well, on what we did to deal with that situation is included in my main report at the absolute last page. And so this was a survey of 86 managed properties from Colliers where we had all the accurate statements. And on the last page, we graphed them. So the ones that are producing at the high end of the range at 30% non-recoverables are where there's been turnover. And so typically what we're going to see that is leasing commissions and required repairs to existing units. And typically this is, in today's day and age, is code review issues. Where since 2011 or 12, every time a new occupancy permit is issued, there's a code review. So what we're going to see is higher costs for new occupancy in new units, which of course is non-recoverable. So when you're hitting 30%, it's an indication of high turnover. When you're below that number, it's normal operations. And below that number, you can see our trend line flattens out at about 7%, which is what we've been saying all along. This isn't an average line. Our average line's 12.8%. So we're looking at a trend line at 7%, which is generally 2% for 2% for replacement reserve, 5% for non-recoverables, and the city calls the management and other. So this is, for the last 20 plus years, we've generally been in agreement on, is that this is the non-recoverable load range. And we're at the low end of it, so we are not looking at costs for problem situations. We're looking at normal costs.
So, okay. I'll get to, as far as this last 2 pages here on your brief, there's no addresses, so it's a bunch of, it's numbers. What does it mean? I mean,
Well, these are all managed properties that Colliers represents, and we're maintaining the privacy of the situation because this is not a required submission. This is a voluntary submission, so it's a market study. And we're at least providing the numbers for it and the rationale. We're not hiding anything, but we're not providing the addresses. One of the issues that I take great exception to is I read this Altus rebuttal done by the city on an rebuttal of an Altus, and they simply said, well, because we disagree with these costs, we're taking them out. And they just missed the entire concept of the project. It wasn't about trying to line by line item omission. It was to look at the market in its entirety and what does the market do. We are not looking for 30% non-recoverables. We're looking for a standardized number and at the low end of the range for a property running in normal operation. Because there's sometimes non-recoverables can be mislabeled as to be shortfall. And that's a common thing in the statements. So by looking at our trend line and going to the bottom, we know we're avoiding the shortfall double dipping issue. These are nothing but non-recoverables, and so I just at this point I wasn't willing to engage into a debate on line item issues, especially when the city has been less than forthcoming on their own methodology. But I think that the other organizations have come to similar agreement on the number, and the city was in the past. So we're not. I think the city's just got a misreading the situation right now.
okay, that's all my rebuttal questions.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Marla, any questions regarding rebuttal?
No.
Okay, thank you. Maurice?
Well, I don't know if I'm asking questions about his presentation of the
Well,
rebuttal.
yeah, you know what, let's do the rebuttal first. Are you finished your presentation? I don't think.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you have, okay, so
So
come
it's wide
on.
open?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a few. Did you inspect this building?
Sorry.
I didn't know
inspected
I
it
would have
numerous
other-
times.
You have?
From 2003. I think my last inspection was 2 weeks ago, although it was only
Okay.
external.
And is this considered to be an A or a B industrial building?
At the time of sale, it was a Sears warehouse with a rail siding, and it was generally deemed to be a good quality investment. It hasn't turned out that way. They've had a fairly large vacancy. There's too much office space in here that isn't being rented, so it'd be an inferior class. It's not a top class. The top class would be Flux Warehouse, so we're talking about 30-foot centers, and say 6,000-foot bays, 27-foot ceiling heights, interior clear heights. And so this building doesn't have the bay anymore. It was never designed with the bay. And I know the assessor's got 26, so that would indicate 23 clear. So it's short side, so no, definitely not an A. It's B. Parking's adequate. I was actually working for the real estate company, it was Stevenson, when WHA went in there as tenant, and it was a interesting conversion. They had to put in elevators and a lot of water handling equipment, they were fortunate to get that size of a tenant when they had the giant Sears vacancies out. I think that's continued on. It's not.
But it's a good building in your view.
It's not a bad building, but it's not a great building. It's moderate quality, sure, middle of the road.
Okay. Now, I couldn't figure out your cap rate piece of paper here, and I don't know what it means because we got BC and you got median at 656, you got Alberta at 694. What were you intending to tell us with this, because it's not Winnipeg? And how does this helpful?
Well, my main point on this was that in the industrial world especially, the City of Winnipeg assessor is making some grave mistakes. And that is with the very low capitalization rates on industrial. If an outside observer of real estate were to look at them, it'd quite literally laugh and say, why would I want to invest in Manitoba at 6.5%? That's ridiculous. I've got no market appreciation. I've got minimal market interest by AAA tenancies. The only tenants there are going to be manufacturers or local users. They want to be, the market activity in Alberta was stunning, and that's where all the REITs want it to be. They're buying up now because they're waiting for the next boom. They want to be in Montreal and Toronto and BC.
So
We're not. It's just to show that we're not a good market, and the assessor has us as a hot market. We're
So
not.
if I used Alberta, for example, the median, which is 694, the purpose of my question is to get to the cap rate stuff. You mentioned that the site is contaminated. Although I've got a question on that. Are you adding, let's say, a 1.25 over the 7 to try and justify your 8.25? I'm trying to get a handle, because you talked about contamination.
You know what? I didn't prepare this initially. My opinion on it is, without the environmental registration, we would be looking in the 7s. Not low 7s, not high 7s, maybe 7.5, somewhere around there. With the impact, it would come up. It's a recent registration. Generally, it depends on the nature of the contamination, and I'm a little more familiar with this than most. It's obviously cleaning supplies, but it's not heavy metal. You'll see some more later on today where we should be 2 points. 1 point sounds about right.
Okay, but I'm going back to, you're saying a recent, no, this is as of September 2011,
That's when
a piece of paper.
that's the last time it was updated, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what it means because it goes on to say, the list alone should not be relied upon to different impacts are present on the site. So the reason I was questioning what you're allowing on the contamination versus the cap in this piece of paper, let's say I'm struggling with that.
Well, the main issue, as I was trying to explain earlier in questioning, is that this information was available to me on a 5-second search, which means it's available to the
Yeah, I heard you on that.
to investors,
I heard you.
to bankers. The minute you have a site that's registered, you're going to get a bias, whether it's right or wrong. It's not my business. It's there. You're going to be dealing with, if you could walk into a bank and get a 70% mortgage at 4.5% on a clean property, you're walking into a bank and they might give you 7.5% on 50%. But mostly, and I read really one interesting article, it said, you know how you get a good loan on a contaminated property? You have all the money in the bank anyway.
Okay, and I've got one last question, Mr. Chairman. I see on the rates, you're at 509 across the board. In your calculation, the city's at 570 for the exempt portion and 632 for the taxable portion. Now, you put them all together. Could you just clarify this a little bit? Am I missing something here?
No, I think what we did is we just took the ratio that was set before and carried it forwards or backwards, whatever these are the past ratios. WHA rent is in the ballpark of the others. I would note one small correction, and you remember I said earlier that the potential was 1394, and we have it listed at 1364, and then we have the NOI listed at 984. Well, I just rechecked all the numbers, and the actual NOI is a bit higher than that, and I think we're comfortable with, obviously, with looking at the actual experience. It's actually 1028. 985. I spend way too much time in these meeting rooms. I don't get to work these numbers out for myself, so you have to put up with my revisions. So my value would actually come up a bit to 12,472. 472, 545. 12,472, 545. And as I said, these were the ratios we had used before on that were in place before: 27.92 school exempt and 72.08% taxable. If we had done them separately, we probably would have come up with a higher school exempt number and a lower taxable number, because all of the vacancies in the taxable portion. So that's, that to me appears to be a little bit too sharp a practice to start trying to break that out and look for an advantage, because that would be an advantage for our claim. So we're content with the ratio from before. And I'll just so my revised number is, the taxable is 8,990,210, which which rounds to 8,990,000. And the school exempt is 3,482,335, rounded to 3,482,000.
Anything else, Maurice?
So that's all. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you. Marla, do you have any questions on the general presentation? Then I'm going to let the assessor ask her questions.
I think they've all been covered now.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me. Tricia, pardon me.
Sure. No. I just had a question about your non-recoverable expenses. You're at 5%. If you look at your expenses, is that 5% of your EGI?
Oh, yeah, it's 5% of the, after the vacancy, yeah.
So the non-recoverable expenses plus the landlord's work is 5%?
No, I didn't touch the landlord's work. We didn't account for it.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Neufeld. So first of all, the laundry facility makes up, or the WRHA makes up about 28% of the rental leasable area. And I think you said in response to Mr. Terrian that being on this impacted list wouldn't affect industrial use for that property. Is that correct?
No, it would affect it would affect uses. It would have less of an impact on an industrial use.
Would have no impact on a warehouse, for instance,
Well,
moving in there?
it wouldn't have well,
You mentioned food, but
yeah, it could, if you're storing food there, it could have an impact.
okay, so let's not deal with that.
But that's not the point of what
Okay.
the impact is. The impact is in the financial markets, which are all part of real estate. We can't escape that. The impact is greater if you have a restricted use, which is why we're only looking at about a 1% differential for, and I don't want to portray myself as an environmental expert, so I think that the impact, agree with that the impact is less so on potential uses, but more so on financial markets.
Okay. So we've dealt with that adjusted potential rent, I guess. So we worked the number too, and I'm going to ask for clarification. Class code 40 exempt at $3,482,000. Class code 60 at $8,990,000
That's correct.
equals a total of $12,472,000.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I guess, yeah, that's $1,000 off the calculation if you use, anyway, okay.
Yeah, I see that
That's
rounding the
right.
other way. I was trying to pick up another 1,000 there.
Yeah,
but
okay.
that's fine. I did.
Okay, my last question. 2018 assessment, the last cycle was $16,729,000. You're asking for about a $5 million reduction from the last cycle. And I guess you said you weren't involved in the last cycle. Somebody accepted another representative, I guess. Is that what you said, I believe?
Yeah, the representative, I'm sure you know the people who file appeals and don't come to the hearings.
Anyway, yeah, but we're looking at a $5 million,
They got-
$4.8 million reduction.
But they got fired and we got hired.
Okay, So we're looking at a $4.8 million
Yes, and
reduction.
I understand they presented us with some difficulties, but we weren't on the job last year, and they never cared about the vacancy issue, obviously.
Was this appealed, by the way?
No, we didn't. No, it
No
was.
appeal?
It was under.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
It was under the control of the other party. We only took it over in April of this year.
Okay, so my point is the $5 million reduction to reflect the vacancy and the hazard, or like they're both, there's an increase in the cap rate and the vacancy rate?
Yes, I think that they're both being addressed, and as I mentioned, we're not looking for 23% vacancy, we're looking for 12. And we're not looking for a 2% change in our perception of cap, we're looking for a 1. 2 in the city's base, but I think that they're incorrect to begin with.
Okay. Okay. Any requirement for summary?
I just want to address, Mr. Neufeld had said, talked a little bit about the non-recoverable expenses and that being no longer used by the assessment department. The modelers and the city assessment has noticed for years that expense from all of the market information we gather, which is we get all the sales mailers and all the income and expense information with all of this stuff, and when you input all that data, it's going down. And this year they decided to take it out because that is what the market was telling us. That model was no longer reflective of the market. I agree, sometimes there are for 5% non-recoverable expenses, and sometimes there's more. And what we were seeing is in the market, most often, it's less than that. That's why that was decided, that it was decided to not take it out, but make a lower expense deduction. And Mr. Neufeld follows appraisal practice, but we are doing mass appraisal here, and it doesn't. Our job is to make this place the tax burden fairly and equitably across everyone. It's not site specific. We're not looking at every line item or every expense that they have. It has to be what the market reflects. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Certainly, Colliers, we don't collect any income and expense forms at all. We just sell the properties and manage them. Our brokers show you they're allocating 7% for non-recoverables. Our property managers have shown you the calculations. The mean is 9%, 7% for a normalized property. Appraisal Institute accredits mass appraisal and single site appraisal, so that's not a factor in this. But the concepts are identical. The only difference is the collection of data goes through a formula of trying to identify outliers and get rid of the ones that are outside the standard deviation, and using more data. And more data means 20 examples to prove something, and it's still only accurate 19 out of 21 times within 4%. That's the model. That's statistics. I don't think I've ever come across a property that wasn't experiencing, an investment property that wasn't experiencing non-recoverables. In the case of this one, 6%, not including all the shortfall losses. And it's an industry norm, and I think the city is a bit misguided, and I think we should get this corrected as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes 1725 Inkster Boulevard. Does anybody need a quick break? Or?
Is there someplace I can get water? Can I take that?
I think we'll take a Webster Boulevard. We're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Ms. Caldwell, when you are ready, please.
This is roll number 14064151600, 1650 Inkster Boulevard. This is, two buildings on the property with an effective year of 1998. It's built of C-class masonry-bearing walls. It's zoned M2, general manufacturing. There's a land area of 196,130 square feet, plan area of 120,960 square feet, with a land to plan area of 1.62. Page 2, sale in 2005. And the following pages just have some exterior photographs as well as some aerial photos of the property. On page 5, again, we have our cap rate chart with 60% of the industrial cap rates falling between 6.34% and 7.80%. And then we have our subject property income stream on page 6. We have a leasable area of 120,960 square feet with a rent of $4 on that. Vacancy loss of 3.5%. Expenses at 2%. A shortfall rate of $3.75. We've applied a model cap rate of 6.5% for our total assessed value of $6,795,000. And I have some comparables on page 7. So for this specific property, I had to go look for comparables outside of the subject area to find bigger comparables with rents on them, because most of them are owner-occupied. So I have rents ranging from as low as $2.96 to as high as $6.01. Say, I think 879 Keewatin, 1150 Fife, and 1750 Inkster Boulevard are in the subject neighborhood. Other than that, the rest are spread around the city. And those rent rates, I think, support our table rate. And I hope the board confirms our value at $6,795,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
You're saying you hopefully did it. It sounds like a personal thing.
Yeah.
The work, sorry, did you get a chance to inspect this property?
I did not inspect for the purposes of this appeal, but I have been in the property before.
On the retail sales portion of it?
No, I've been through it.
Oh, okay, good. And you've seen that what it's all about. It's they store clothing for redistribution. And the ceiling height, you've got it listed at 16 to 26, but that's your exterior height, correct? That's not the clear height?
Right.
On your comparables used to support it, were these calculated the same way?
On the comparables?
On the ceiling height, yeah. Are those also from the city database prepared as exterior?
Yes.
Okay. The workup page 6, is this model generated?
It is, yes.
On your, the comparable list on 2 days ago, an assessor quoted 1,400 Saskatchewan, and he said he had to retract it because it wasn't a real rent.
Yeah, you can take that out.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I have it crossed out here. Yes, I just learned that that's not an arm's length.
Not arm's length.
It was 1,400 Saskatchewan.
1,400 Saskatchewan. I believe I have it as a comparable in one of my other briefs as well.
Good. Right. Now, 1155. I'm going to check something here. Okay. The site coverage, you probably would admit is rather low.
Yes, it is.
Was that accounted for in your evaluation somewhere?
No, it wasn't.
And so without an adjustment for that, did you have the land areas of your comparables listed anywhere? Or is it just the leasable area?
The land area, I don't have them in my,
Okay. The 1750 Inkster, the bottom of your list, I was provided an opinion or a valuation lately that indicated that there was rail with that property. And I don't know if that's true or not. Do you have any information?
I don't.
Okay. Do you differentiate between rail and non-rail?
Depends on the circumstance.
What does the model have rail or non-rail input?
It has manual input?
Oh, okay. So it's not something that would show up necessarily in the...
No, it would have to be something we put in as an influence. I do have the calculations of the land to building
Oh.
ratio, if that's what you mean. I have it on my brief. I just.
Oh,
yeah,
sure, that'd be interesting if you could provide it.
Sure. 1835 Sergeant, 2.26. 1855 Sergeant, 1.78. 879 Keewatin, 3.31. Fife, 1155, 2.20. 861 McLeod, 2.09. 50 Furniture Park, 2.92. And
That's not mine. That's not mine. It's not
1750 Inkster, it's 2.31.
I'm trying not to get in trouble. The entire hearing, I wasn't going to pull it out, and I forgot to turn my ringer off here.
What was the first one, Sergeant?
Yes, 2.26.
Okay, thank you.
So our subject property is at the lower end of your
It is.
range. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
This one you didn't have an income sheet? A mailer?
Oh, this is owner occupied.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah. So we typically only include a mailer if it's if they're claiming.
Okay, I
rent.
wasn't sure because when it said two buildings, I didn't know. if
Oh,
one was
yeah,
rented,
no,
one was-
yeah.
Okay, so
It's
both
just one.
buildings are owner occupied.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I had the same question, thank you. Okay.
I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. This property has a bit of an interesting history to it in that it was originally, I believe, 60,000 feet in and around that area. There was the older section. And the owner's other property was partially expropriated. and that was on Gomez. And they carry a product line that requires just-in-time shipping, and the expropriation blocked their access to their site. So what they ended up doing was they had this building and they put an addition on it to move their just-in-time inventory to it. So it was a deliberate move, which wasn't driven by market value. It was driven by a necessity of the business to protect their long-term client, the business relationship. That's why we ended up with an overbuilt site. And as a result, it's not that conducive to a change in use. The truck maneuvering space issues, so the part that was added, if you look at the picture on page 2, the overhead, where the red markers on, that's the old site, and the added site was the L-shape surrounding it. As a result, we do have a bit of like I said, we ended up with a very low site ratio, and then a building that had wall heights that varied. You can see from the pictures that the old section, although the city calls it 16 feet, it's really about 12 or 13 clear, so it's not great warehousing height. The addition part is about 23 feet clear, so that's 4 pallets. That's the terminology. A pallet is generally 5 feet. In the case of this property, they use a lot of overhead conveying systems for moving clothing through the site. The rent is, I think, fair in respect to the inferior quality in the low land area. A number of rents, it's owner occupied on my page 3, just a couple that I was looking at. The 1750 Inkster at 312, that incidentally came from the city of Winnipeg. 1725 Sargent at 265, that's a bit inferior. 1155, we have the older lease in here, so I'm not entirely sure. The assessor may have the updated lease, but I thought it was post-reference, but it could in fact be applicable. But what's interesting about 1155, I have it listed at 28 feet clear. It was Kuehne+Nagel, it was shipping, and let's see, the assessor has that at 31 clear, 31, so 33 feet for the truss. We're on the same page. That's 5 pallet heights high, so it's superior for storage. It's a high cube space. Some other spaces, 1821 Wellington, that's the old Eaton's warehouse, and that has a couple of ceiling heights in it. The first one at 146,000 feet, similar to the subject, is at $2. That's Park and Fly. So I'm trying to remember, I was in there, I think that's about 18 feet clear. Then Sherwin, which is a plastic manufacturer, at 295, 24 clear. 1820 Wellington, again, that's Bison Transport, and that number is incorrect. It is not 350, it's 250, and they have a rail spur, an active rail spur. And those are the rents I was looking at, a range of rents, 100,000 feet to 200,000 feet in that neighborhood, in that general neighborhood. And so they're indicating a range of a low and inferior range of 265 and a superior range. I don't. We thought 375, but I think the assessor's FIFE is superior, but it would be establish the upper end of the range at 450. So we had put a number of 380 a foot on it to account for the lower section and the poor land building ratio. And as far as the cap is concerned, I think we were being a bit on the aggressive side. My opinion would be an 8.5 capitalization rate. I think the factors we discussed were already addressed in the selection of the rental rate. So I would suspect a lower rate would be more preferable. Probably about 8%, because despite the lower rent application, I think what we're dealing with is the number of users who could take advantage of this property are limited due to the low trucking capacity of it. So I just changed that to 8%, and my number is 4,918,588, rounded to 4,919,000, which is a slight increase over last year, which is acceptable. And last year, we handled it as well, so we have some consistency here.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Ms. Caldwell, any questions of the assessor?
No, I think that on your comparable page, the 1155, I believe those are two different leases.
I don't think the building's that big. I think it's just
108,
I think it's just a measurement. I've seen that on different reports from Fife, on different market reports that they use different dimensions.
Okay, because I did look one up for, that was 2012.
I don't think the building is more than 140,000 feet.
I got 425 at least for two. The Park and Fly, that's just a shell building?
No, that's
Parking space?
That's industrial building. It's it's built to modern code, so it doesn't matter if one wants to call it a shell or not. It's got to meet code, so it's got the full range of services.
What kind
It's a warehouse with doors to drive in.
So,
It has superior lighting to most warehouses.
okay, it's a parking
Yes.
lot. Okay, that's all.
And they use a lot of the land up front for their approach system. So they do have a good land allocation.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if you've addressed this. I see your square footage is at 120 and the city's at 129.60.
Oh,
So I didn't know which one was correct here.
I see that. When the addition was put on, we got a statement from the building operator from plans, and I guess because it's an owner property, it hasn't been reviewed. I think it's not an issue for me. We're fine. You can add the 960 or leave it off. And I'm just going to make a note of it for next time around.
It's about $3,600
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
your paper. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Marta?
That was my question. so-
Okay.
You know, I think what it was is the former exterior wall that we're not counting it. That's what the building project manager, because it had, when you put an addition on, sometimes you blow the wall out, you get to use all the space, and sometimes you got to let it be because it's part of holding the building up. And I think that's where it came down to is that we took it off, or the project manager took it off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my only question is regarding that in-park, or that parking ride or whatever. Is that a heated building?
Yes.
It is heated, or
Yes.
kind of low temperature heated, I guess.
No. I've only ever parked in there once. It was a really cold day, and no, it was nice.
Okay,
I think you have to for code. I don't think you can get away with it anymore because there are exhaust air recovery systems and makeup airs in it.
okay, thank you.
There are many stupid friends who have cars and they're storing them, and all their spaces are getting decommissioned because they don't meet standard.
Okay, requirement for summary?
No, I don't have it.
The ceiling height is inferior in most of the building. The land building ratio is very low, so less interest in alternate use. And the building was designed and built to meet a specific need, so its utility in the market is lesser. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes 1650 Inkster Boulevard. Next property on the docket is 1611 Brookside Boulevard. We're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Ms. Caldwell, when you are ready, please.
All right, this is rule number 14096650500. The rule year is 2020, and we have an assessed value of $472,000 on this property. It was built in 1975, metal frame walls. It's zoned M1, land area of 55,871 square feet, plan area of 5,500 square feet, land to plan area of 10.16. You see, this is an owner-occupied property, so there are no subject leases, and there have been no sales on the property either. And then the next couple pages just have some exterior views of the property and some aerial views going on page 4. Page 5, again, we have our cap rate chart. And page 6, we have our income workout. Again, we have 5,500 square feet leasable with a rent of $5.40, vacancy loss at 3.5%, expenses of 2%, shortfall at $3.75, and an overall cap rate of 5.8%, giving us our total estimated value of $472,000. And then I have some rental comparables on page 7 of our brief. All my comparables are in the subject neighborhood. Similar size, similar wall heights, with rents ranging from $4 to $6.89 to support our table rent rate. I asked the board today to confirm our value at $472,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Was your valuation done by the model?
Yes, it was.
And you mentioned earlier that it's your understanding that it's owner occupied. When was the last time that was checked?
I'm not sure.
Just looking at your rents very briefly, 231 Oak Point Highway. Who's the tenant?
Match Auto Market. This is for a portion. If you look,
Yeah, no, it's for the old motorcycle shop, correct?
it is a portion of that.
Right.
A specific portion. If you look on page 13.
Yeah. But it was for retail sales of vehicles, correct?
Well, this back portion is actually just warehouse.
Sorry, what page?
Page 13. There's a picture of the comparable 231 Oak Point, and outlined in red is a warehouse section.
That's not the right size. I'm just saying that because I'm very familiar with the property,
Yeah.
and it's all one rent.
No.
That's the addition you've outlined here.
And that's what they're paying. They're paying separate rents,
Okay.
and that's the rent that they pay on that portion.
I know you got it wrong, but that's okay. I was just curious about it. It's done on a model, so The capitalization rate at 5.8%, I'm looking at this site, it's, would you consider this well located?
Brookside Boulevard. Yeah, it's a pretty high traffic area.
What about the lot configuration, being narrow and deep?
Yeah, what about it?
Can you turn a semi-trailer around in it?
No, I'm pretty sure that's not what it's used for. No, it doesn't look like you can.
And the lot's not paved?
It doesn't appear to be.
Do you have a copy of the income and expense form with you?
I don't.
Okay. Do you have a copy of any information on who the tenant is?
I don't, because I...
You have a
no, I
picture
don't.
there, don't you?
Red River?
Red River Roofing,
Yeah,
siding,
right.
and the owner is listed as 2D Holdings, correct?
Yep.
Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just missed one thing. What type of construction is this? Do you know, is this pole frame?
I'm not sure.
And by pole frame, I mean like wood framing with sheathing on it. It's not metal pre-engineered. That's fine if you don't know the difference. It's fine. Thank you.
I do know the difference.
Oh,
I'm just-
sorry,
I'm just saying what, I mean,
What do your records indicate?
record indicates metal frame and walls.
Frame walls. Okay. Okay. Very generic. Thanks.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
So is this owner occupied or not?
You'd have to ask Mr. Neufeld. He seems to disagree with that.
I guess I'll get my answer eventually. Keep me in suspense.
Mr. Neufeld, any comment?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
When it's my turn.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Marla, anything else?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it was
Maurice.
the 5.80, sort of, I guess, I looked at it, then I went to see your chart, and it's between, it's not even in that range. So I don't know if the model went out of whack here. Your range is 634 to 780 on the cap,
Right.
and you're using 580, so I couldn't figure this one.
Well, if you look just to the left of the highlighted area, we have lows of 5.5 and highs of 9.8.
Oh, on the left there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this
because
is,
you had highlighted.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the lows and highs don't typically come up because 60% are in the range between 6.34 and 7.80.
Okay, I hadn't picked that up.
It's my guess is that it went that low because of the small size of the building itself.
Yeah, on page 12, I think it's all okay, but I'm looking at this here on the picture, and is this the parcel of land, the one that's all circled? Like here?
Oh, that's one of my comparables.
Well, it's sitting 1611 Brookside, and I thought that was the...
Oh no, you're looking at the if you look above the
Oh,
picture,
Oak
it says
Point.
251 Oak Point.
Oh, okay.
The at the beginning of the brief on page 4,
Yeah.
you can see some aerial photos that show that the building in the front and the land in the back.
Okay, I misread this. Thank you.
Anything else, Maurice?
No, that's all.
And I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Yes, property is now tenanted. The landlord sold the business to the tenant a few years back, and now he's renting. The income and expense form indicates property owner 2D Holdings, and tenant is Red River. and the rent is listed as $50,400 per annum gross. And then they've listed net operating income at $24,505, but I just noticed this, that they've included $12,000 in property management, which is really high. The assessor's rent is, I think, adequate for this property, so I'm just going to rework very, very slightly the number. And I'm taking their net income of $27,365, and I am subtracting 5% of the potential rent for operating costs, which is $1,433. So my NOI would be $25,932. The capitalization rate, this is just like miscellaneous industrial. I think I looked it up, and there's nothing on the database on this one. It's a bad location on Brookside. It's difficult to get to. It's a narrow lot, difficult to put trailers on. On the plus side, it's small, so you're going to have a more competitive from contractors and people like that. So I would anticipate not too many difficulties there. So I still think an 8% rate is something I would never exceed on industrial like this, whether it be assessment or appraisal. We don't throw up the 5.8s because we get sued. They don't exist. 8% is the range we're working in industrial for properties like this. It gets me a value of $324,150, rounded to $324,000. So just to repeat, that's the assessor's rental income, all deductions, plus 5% for shortfall, capped at 8%. And for your consideration, the non-recoverables on this property, in a standard sense, this isn't a great property to use, but in a standard sense would be about 14%. But that's because it's small, and you got, the accountant costs are pretty much, well, not an accountant, but some things cost the same for a small property and a big property. And that's why non-recoverables are higher in the small properties. So it does come in at 14% on actuals, but we're just looking for 5%. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, any questions of the appellant?
I don't think, I just want to clarify, you said how did the tenant work? The owner sold the business?
Yeah, the owner was operating the business and owned the building and sold the business to another operator and set up a rent. I'm just wanted to. What do you want to copy the municipal assessment act? I don't know why it's here.
So, okay, so you're not using that rent, the actual rent you're going with. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm just looking at an old. The history here of submissions, just to see where that changed. But we just contacted them yesterday to verify.
Okay. Tricia, you're done?
Yes.
Marla, any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Maurice?
Yeah, you've mentioned that this was sold to a new owner.
Business
So the building is still
owned by the
same one?
yeah
Okay.
the building was owned by
So same
business
owner?
operator. He sold his business and leased the building to the new
Okay.
operator.
Okay. Now, when did that happen? We got a date.
That's what I'm looking for.
You said a couple of years, but
Well, 2 years ago, we were working for the owner who was operating it. And now, or at least the statements were indicating that. And I see why. There was also another issue with it. Yeah, it's always been 2D Holdings. Okay, yeah, here's our application, Jake. And then he told us that he's renting it out now. That's his paid rent. And that goes back... That goes back to the time of the last reassessment. So it would have been effective in 2017, last time we brought this in. Yeah, around 2017.
not sure.
Not sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Neufeld, what's the rental rate currently?
We're using the assessor's rate of $540, and you'll see that that's just they put in $12,000 for management expenses, and so that's not right. It would be much lower than that, probably $500 to $100 a month roughly. So when I was just sitting here doing the math, all of a sudden my number was within a few $100s of the assessor's number. So 540 is good.
Is it low?
Okay, it's 10 cents lower.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
No, I'll always tell you. Now, here we go. So this is how I know it. Last time around we were dealing with the owner because there was a penalty.
Okay. So my question is, as an experienced real estate, you deal in real estate, what would buildings of this style sell for per square foot?
Anywhere, like in this neighborhood, that configuration, I guess a safe number was always generally $50 to $60 a foot. Because this is an owner building, more so than an investment property. And then it can go higher if you were on a better route or the building was configured right. Like this is just simple full frame construction, so you're dealing with walls that don't have any bearing capability. It's just shelter.
Yeah, because it looks more modern than a 1975 building, but I guess that's reflected by the siding company that.
Yeah.
Yes. They work their product on it, but when you look at it, I just know from looking at these that it's not a metal pre-engineered building or not a heavy steel because the pitch would be higher. It's just a simple frame building.
Okay, that's my last question. Any requirement for summary?
No.
Mr. Neufeld, you good?
Good.
Thank you. That concludes 1611 Brookside. And next property on the docket, 231 Oak Point Highway, speaking of the devil. And we're dealing with the 2020 Realty Assessment. Ms. Caldwell, when you're ready, please.
Right, this roll number 14096181600, 231 Oak Point Highway. The roll year is 2020. We have an assessed value of $2,132,000. There's 5 buildings on this parcel, 1-story building. We have an effective year of 1992. Wall heights from 12 to 26 feet. It's zoned M1. The land area is 96,243 square feet. Plan area is 37,638 square feet with a land to plan area of 2.56. Page 2. there's nothing there. I believe there's actually some tenants here now.
Yeah, there have to be, because you said they were in the last
Yeah.
hearing.
But they did not populate for some reason. Oh. Because net leases only populate, not gross leases. We don't include gross leases for analysis at all. So, that's why.
Well, I can send you this.
Page 3, you'll find some photos. Page 4, exterior photos. Page 5, aerial photos. Page 6, we have our cap rate chart. And on page 7, we have the income workup. So there's 37,560 square feet of leasable area. It's broken down into several different business premises, and the overall rent is $5.66. We have a vacancy loss at 20%, expenses of 2%, shortfall at $3.75, cap rate of 6.5%, giving our estimated assessed value of $2,132,000. I have some comparables on the next 2 pages. All are of the same property type class in the subject market region, with rents ranging from $5.22 to $8.75. I have this page. There's a couple on page 9 as well to support our subject, our table rent. And when I look, I do actually have the income and expense mailer in the back of the brief showing one tenant at the time. In 2000, this is the 2017 mailer. Shows one tenant. We asked the board to confirm our value of $2,132,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Colwell. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes, you mentioned you did have the mailer. How many square feet does it say?
It doesn't look like it says.
I just read it.
Not from the mailer.
Got me there. Okay. Do you not have a copy of the lease in your files? Because I did send it to the last assessor.
No, I don't.
Okay. So just want to review a couple of things. You have 37,638 square feet listed for plan area, and going to the picture on page 5, the overhead, do you know how that's split up?
No, I don't.
Well, you have 231 Oak Point, and then there's 237 Oak Point, and there's a shed at the back. Do you do a breakdown for that? Because I'm just trying to figure it out from your page 7.
I don't know how it's broken into the premises. I can't.
Okay. Would you necessarily disagree with me if I could, for everyone's assistance, put these together?
Sure.
Okay. So the truck bay's listed at 237 on your premise IDs. That's a total of 21,140 square feet. which equals the 5250 plus 14140 plus 1750. Like 1750 is the base size. So that's what they add up. So that would be, those are the truck bays. The ones marked 231 Oak Point are 8310 plus 6190. And the ones marked 1920 is the shed in the back. Now, I'm just providing this because I'm extremely familiar with this property. Given that the two buildings were separated for the purpose of preparing this model, would there be a change in valuation if they were listed as one property combined? Or like not, like I guess there are three separate properties, meaning 237 truck bays, plus then 231, the old motorcycle shop, and then the garage?
It's separate. These are business for us. These are business premises
Right.
because of the.
But they're actually quite old, though, aren't they?
Yeah, but I
They
mean,
date back to Lyle Rack's time when he split them up.
yes.
Okay.
Or who split them up?
When your assessor split them up set up the premise IDs in 2003, 4.
Okay. Because the premise IDs are strictly split up for business assessment.
Right. But they're
According to what tenants
how many of these are
occupy.
active, though?
Pardon?
How many of these are active on the business tax side?
I mean, it's still available for rent. We still have to pay
No, I
place the rent.
understand. I
mean, certainly.
There's no contentions issues here. I just want to make sure that we properly characterize this and see if we have an agreement on it.
Right, okay.
Where like, you're saying 37,560, and I'm just putting forth to you that based on the sketch, that this is how it is to be allocated.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So the actual square footage is 37,560.
We're not disagreeing that is the plan area. I'm glad I got a calculator today. Have you inspected this site?
I have not.
So just to confirm, this all comes from the model, and the application of a 20% vacancy?
That was a carryover from the previous assessment.
Oh, okay. So that's not part of the model then, that was an override from the
Yes.
previous one?
Yep.
Anything else in there that changed?
No, that's all.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not meaning to take a long time, but I just want to make sure that we look at this properly. I need 5 minutes, but I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
But maybe if you just have long questions, I can get my work done.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can ask when you're finished doing that.
No, I don't have any more questions.
Oh, okay, okay. Marla, do you have a long question for us?
An existential question? Or does it have to be specifically about this? I'm sorry, I don't have any of them.
Okay. Maurice does.
Yeah, I'm going to ask one.
There we go.
You mentioned the 20% as a carryover. Now, how sure are we of that figure? Because if it's a carryover, what does it mean? Because
Yeah.
I'm trying to get some substantiation why. It's a big amount.
Yeah.
It's there last time, who knows what it is this time? And is it long-term or not, vacancy? I'm trying to stretch this to 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
It has had substantial vacancy for several years. I believe it's mostly occupied currently, but in the majority of the reference period, it was mostly vacant still.
But you mentioned that now it's mostly occupied.
Yes, but leading up
As
to
of what date?
recently, like post-reference.
Post-reference?
Yes.
Okay, so on the 1st of April 2018, you're still sticking to that 20%?
Yes,
Because that was back a number of years?
yes.
How many months was that? A minute and a half? That's all, that's really all I had. Although now we've straightened out the square footage, because the appellant had a little different one, but I think he's accepting the 37,560, is that correct?
No, we just want to clarify where it is.
Oh,
Well, we agreed physically all of it exists, and I'll get to it in my presentation.
Okay.
so that's where okay, so I want to see if there's anything else. No, I think that's all, Mr. Chairman, it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Caldwell, in your opinion, is the 20% vacancy clause still warranted?
For this reference period, yes. Looking at, yeah.
And that was an override. Normally, that wouldn't be applied, would it?
Right, for some reason with our new system, vacancy overrides are coming over, unless you, usually overrides are supposed to come off, but, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that would be up to you as an assessor when you get the property to review it and possibly adjust it.
Yeah, but they've
Not
already.
that I'm blaming.
No, yeah, you're right. But when the assessed value goes out, it's based on what's already come over, so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit confused about the square footage here. I think what Mr. Neufeld is trying to say is that possibly a review is required for the individual premise IDs.
Yeah, yes, pretty much.
But the total is probably going to be close.
Well, well, yeah,
Okay, you'll deal with it.
yeah.
Okay.
Even if you take that whole truck bay area, say, if each truck bay area was rented by a different company,
It used to be, yeah.
yeah, then we would split them all up into those individual, and that's how it would appear on here. And obviously, scales of economy, those would be higher.
Right.
But like you're saying, if it's
No, and
tentative,
yeah, that's correct. It used to be set up that way. One
Right.
was the owner's space, and one was a collision repair place, and now it's all one space.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that, I mean, if it was all one space, that would make it give it a lower rate.
So the rent per square foot would be revised because of economy of scale, I
Yes.
guess, theoretically.
Yeah.
But until you know exactly what it is.
Right.
Okay. So somebody's going to go there and do an inspection, I
easy.
guess. Yeah. Okay. That's all my questions, Mr. Neufeld. How are you doing there?
Oh, great.
Okay.
I'm going to make it even more confusing.
Yay.
We're used to that, aren't we?
I know. and again, I take full blame for this because I haven't been able to do any of these workups, and I'm very, very familiar with this. So this used to be the Harley Davidson store, and it also had the truck bays on the side that were the owners. The owner was using some of them, but the bulk of them were used by a truck collision repair outfit. And they got tired of this lot because the Harley Davidson was strangling. They couldn't get the trucks in the back, so they vacated several years ago. And then they closed up the Harley Davidson dealership in 2000 and wait, I know when this was, 13. Because I waited that long to buy a motorcycle until they were closed because I didn't want to offend them and buy a different motorcycle. So I bought one in 2014, so they closed in 13. I waited that long. And it sat vacant for 4 years. And they did finally lease January 15th, 2017. And I do have a copy of the lease here. And I don't know why the people who did this didn't even read this lease. But the Harley-Davidson portion, which is the entire building, the two sections that the assessor has, is in the lease 14,547 square feet. And the rent is $675 a foot. So that's $98,192. Now, the discrepancy here we had on the size was they took the $675, but they never read the lease because there's a mezzanine space in here that was formerly set up for club meetings for Harley. That is not in a rentable space. It's not deemed rentable. The lease it's not separately demised. The lease doesn't deal with it. The only money coming out of it is the $98,000. Now, you could artificially inflate the area to $15,921 to include the mezzanine, but you're just going to drive down the value because the rent doesn't change. You're just having higher shortfall. So my first line I'm changing to $98,192. The 21,140 square feet is at this present time economically vacant. The owner is using 6 bays at the back for a car collection, personal use. I told him if you put a bed in there, we'd get him a residential classification, but no such luck. The other units are just sitting empty. They from time to time, when the owner's son parks trucks in there, but they're not generating income because the lot now has a used car dealer and you can't move on the lot. The shed at the back is unheated. It was originally set up for storing higher value parts just to have them under security. It does not have heat. There is a padlocked gas main going to it. It does not have insulation. We've taken many assessors through there. It's just a garage, a shed. So I'm not putting any value on it whatsoever. And even if you were to put a nominal value on it, when you start looking at the vacancy considerations and shortfall, it'll end up being a negative value in the valuation. So it's better just to disregard it. So the only income I'm showing is $98,192 for the old Harley building, which is now a used car dealer, and $73,990 for the truck base, which is a $350 rate. Now, the $350 rate was not arbitrarily selected. That was the last rent that was paid by the third-party tenants for the space. They were demised, and not all of them have water. Only the ones that were used by the body shop had water. The rest were dry. But now that it's all under one care and control, we're just extending the whole rate to the entire 21,000 feet. So my net income is $172,182. The vacancy, I like that they awarded it a 20% vacancy, but it was not in existence at the reference year, and they did manage to correct their problem. And in the previous case management, the assessor recognized the chronic vacancy, and so it was dealt with. So now we have to accept a more normalized vacancy. So all I'm considering as vacant is half of the truck bays. Now that's roughly, on an income basis, it's roughly $35,000. But all I've done is just put a 10% vacancy on it, which means that after vacancy, it's only a $17,000 deduction. My rent I'm using is $154,964. We are asking for 5% for non-recoverables and 2% for other. And the shortfall works out to $13,383. So that was easy to calculate. It's half what it was before, roughly half. And we're using it on a smaller square footage. We use it in a larger square footage, our value would be lower. So my NOI is $130,733. Capitalization rate, we had some good reviews on this with the assessor, and I thought we had come to an agreement on it, and we were fine with it. Not 9.5, that's for sure. The rate we were looking at is 8.5%, and the reason why is that we have two incompatible uses on a piece of land, both of which, if they were used to their full extent, would strangle the other. It was a mistake in the first place to build a motorcycle shop in an industrial neighborhood, and that was proven to be true when they closed it. So, but then we had these truck bays. It's really an either-or situation. Do go the truck bays or try to make use of the building. The 4 years spent marketing it were a difficulty in trying to find a tenant in it. One of the suggestions was it would make a very good site for a dispatch for a courier. That was about the optimal use we could think of, but the money wasn't there. The eventual user at $675 was the best they could get. So I think that it provides a real concern. So the capitalized at 8.5%, our value is $1,538,040. Rounded to $1,538,000. That's a substantial increase over last year, which we acknowledge deals with an improvement in the vacancy situation. Even though the assessor gave it away that she was going to let us keep it, I'm saying we shouldn't, but we do have to look at the paid rent and a real cap rate. So at the end of our workup, our NOIs are vary by $8,000. So it's that difference, and that's probably, I don't know what that's attributable to, but after that it would be a difference in capitalization.
Probably the 5%.
Yeah, I didn't want you to say that because I didn't want you to hang your hat on anything. In case you're one of those anti-5% people.
We're not anti-anything. We listen to the evidence.
The issue with this property, there have been so many non-recoverables on it. Of course, this would never fit in anyone's study. It's been 4 years of extremely negative cash flow. The lease, which I have, by the way, when you're talking about non-recoverables, has a significant amount of items in it that they don't get to recover on. They only get to recover taxes, and the tenant has their own utility hookup, so everything else would be a non-recoverable.
Anything else? Mr. Neufeld?
No, that's
Okay,
it.
thank you. Tricia, any questions of the appellant?
Did you mention what was the 560 difference? Sorry, if you did, I missed it. In leasable area?
Yeah, we didn't account for the garage in the back because it's unheated.
Oh, I thought it was 1920.
No, yeah, that's
shed.
the shed in the back, 1920.
So it would.
Well, we were using 35,687. The old Harley Davidson dealership by the lease is 14,547, which they're not including the mezzanine in the lease.
Oh, okay.
If you want to include it in there, the value actually drops if you're using actual income because you have a higher shortfall.
No questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
I don't.
Maurice?
Thank you.
And I am good too. Any requirement for summary? Rocky, okay?
I apologize for the sloppy work, but, and I just hope that it's respectful that we are, when we say that there's a vacancy problem, we're straightforward with it, and when we say there isn't one, we admit that there isn't one. I should get points there for something, I don't know why.
Okay. Okay, that concludes
Maybe
231 Oak
5%
Point
ones.
Highway.
No comment.
Next property on the docket is 154 Park Lane Avenue. 154 Park Lane. And we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Ms. Caldwell, when you're ready, please.
Okay, I actually have a recommendation for this property. I'm going to go through the rule number and the assessed value, and then give
You have
my
a handout of the
recommendation.
rec?
I do, yeah.
Okay, might as well get it now, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Give Mr. Neufeld time to accept that, and then we'll...
Love it.
Oh, sorry.
I just want
I'm going
one
the wrong
thing
way.
mentioned, that's all.
There you go.
So this is rule number, oh, sorry, does everyone have a copy?
Yes.
Yes, okay. 07569062200, 154 Park Lane Avenue. For roll year 2020, we have an assessed value of $784,000. And I have a recommendation to revise the value to $495,000.
Okay. Would you mind quickly going through and...
That is a vacancy adjustment at 25%.
All right, so we got a rec to revise the vacancy. Mr. Neufeld, any response to the rec?
Just comments, and I think they're dealing with the situation appropriately in the value. We disagree with the capitalization rates, but they're addressing it in vacancy. The property was purchased by the current owner from the Crown after it was seized from the previous owner under proceeds of crime. It was a grow-up. So there's an environmental issue, obviously, and it's not on the list, but been in it several times. In fact, I guess it's a semantic issue. They don't want their cap rates challenged, but we'll deal with it in vacancy. That's fine. We agree with the final number.
You agree with the
Final
recommendation?
number, yes.
Oh, okay. So,
Maybe we have a recess, a short recess, please.
of course, yeah, I'm just going to wind this up here. Just-
Okay.
So, Ms. Caldwell is
Yes.
recommending $495,000. Mr. Neufeld is agreeing with the final number at $495,000.
That's correct.
Right, okay. Any questions from the panel? Is she okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess if it's necessary. Okay. Thanks, Kelsey. Okay. I will now call the hearing back to order. We are now dealing with 100 Eagle Drive, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty appeal. Ms. Caldwell, when you are ready, please.
Okay, this is roll number 14096496800. For the roll year 2020, we have an assessed value of $1,915,000. This is a one-story building with an effective year of 1980. Wall height's 18 and 19 feet. It's zoned M1. The land area is 275,226. Plan area is 24,160 square feet with a land to plan area of 11.39. On page 3, you'll see some exterior photos of the subject property. And page 4, some aerial views of the property as well. On page 5, we have our cap rate chart. Again, our 60% of our cap rates fall between 6.34% and 7.80%. Turning to page 6, you'll find the income workup. We have a total leasable area of 26,494 square feet at a rate of $5.49. Vacancy loss at 3.5%. Expenses at 2%, a shortfall of $3.75, and a cap rate of 7%, giving our assessed value of $1,915,000. And on the following page 7, I have some rent comparables, all in the subject neighborhood, with rents from $5.25 to $8.49 to support our table rate. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask that the board confirms our value of $1,915,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, did you inspect the property?
I did not.
And page 6, is this all from the model?
It is, yeah.
Can you tell me what, you have a plan area of 24,160, so what is the difference in the square footage? Do you know where it's applied?
I don't. Right. No, my guess is going to be some mezz space.
Okay, you list wall height at between 18 and 19 feet, correct?
Yes.
And that's an exterior measurement?
Yes, correct.
So interior clear height would be approximately 15 to 16 feet?
Correct.
And typical ceiling joist be about another foot?
Correct.
So if you had 2 floors in at most 16-foot building, you would have 7.5 feet per floor?
Yeah.
And again, same question I asked before, your model doesn't account for any sort of environmental concerns?
No, it doesn't.
And does your city records show what the former use on this site was?
Not that I'm aware of.
There's a, I don't know what you want to call it, a breezeway between these buildings?
Okay.
Correct? They're on separately titled lots?
Okay.
There's three lots of record here, correct? Or if you don't know, that's fine. You've only got the assessment parcel on your chart, but you have the city planning on this at all?
No, I don't.
Do you have I just want to make sure that we don't have any issues at dispute here, that whether there's some agreement. I'm not looking for anything else. Like a copy of the assessment notice or tax roll, which would indicate that there are 3 lots here. Do you have any of that?
I'm not even sure what you're referring to.
Okay, no, that's fine. So you're not aware that there's these buildings were built on separate lots and connected with an unheated breezeway?
Oh, no.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
No.
Thank you. Maurice, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Caldwell, is this owner occupied, I guess?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. As far as you know.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my only question. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. This is 3 lots of record that have been amalgamated under one roll, and we have no objection to that. But if you look at the overhead pictures, you can see that there were 2 buildings. Each was built on a separate lot, and then they were connected by an unheated breezeway. The space that we differ from, we're using the plan area of 24,160. Inside each of these 2 buildings, there's a mezzanine. The building on the west side is an open storage mezzanine without utilities. It's just a deck. The mezzanine on the east building was set up as a residence, but it's not legal, and it's no longer in use. It's just dead storage. It has a 6-foot ceiling. So it's not capable of being considered as rentable space. I do have pictures of them, and I guess they didn't make the cut here on the reassessment, but I do have pictures if anybody wants to see what these mezzanines look like. They are somewhat dated. The building was originally built for the storage and sale of surplus Army parts, U.S. Air Force parts. There's it's called a supplemental heater, and it's a direct-fired kerosene heater where when an aircraft has to be maintained warm and they don't have to worry about little nice things like clean air, because it's all outside, they will force the air through the direct-fired kerosene and keep the aircraft warm. So after the end of the buildup in the Vietnam War, the owner, Mr. Hermanson, purchased all of these surplus units, imagine fairly cheaply, from the U.S. Air Force, and had been converting them for use in the construction business. Because as Canada, building season extended longer and people began putting tarps on their projects, and they used these direct-fired units to warm them. So the entire acreage was littered with surplus Air Force heating units. And it was cleaned up about 2 or 3 years ago, and I also have pictures of all the units. No environmental has been done on it because it's been in the same ownership for decades. It's going to be an issue. And these are old pictures. They've been submitted to the Board of Revision in the past. So just, if you have any objection to just them taking a look at it. And they'll show the mezzanines and the outside yard.
May I have it?
Of course. So do we have one copy for record, or?
This one.
I can get, I'd get several copies here.
Well, you can Kelsey keep this for the record? File.
I have it somewhere, so if it's needed to be, sure, okay.
Okay.
Now I have to go look for new pictures, but I have them somewhere. I just don't know where. Sorry, I know where to find it. I don't know, it's here. They're filed. I have a weird filing system. So it is owner occupied. It will face a phase 2, and I'm not an expert, and I can't comment on whether there's contamination or not, but there were several thousand kerosene-powered direct-fired gas heaters or aircraft heaters parked outside for a long period of time, and those things leak. We had looked at this site, and we selected a rent and I don't know why it's 457. I haven't got the faintest idea why 457 is in here. It's owner occupied. This would, in the market, drive a rental rate somewhere between $4.50 and $5. Okay, well, I don't know why they picked that. I didn't put this together. I'm comfortable with anything between $4.50 and $5, but I'm not getting my calculator out. I think the assessor's rent, the main problem with it is that mezzanine space is completely unrentable by code and by utility. Code meaning it's not set up for occupancy of any sort legally, and by utility, we're dealing with 6-foot spaces, which are offer no utility. We're better off to have a higher industrial space. You can rack items higher. Now, what they're doing now currently is they're building their heaters off-site, and they're bringing them here for storage and service. So that's what they're doing here is the gas, and they've switched their fuel as well. So they're still doing construction heaters and direct and indirect fired, and selling them through here. As far as the capitalization rate is concerned, we're fairly adamant that there's going to be problems down the road on this property, because based on the use of it, we're just accepting a reality. It will require this, and the capitalization rate at 8.5, in my opinion, is probably even on the low side. Broken record here, I didn't prepare this. I probably would have used a higher rent and a higher cap if I had done this myself, so I'm not going to change the value because they'll balance each other off. And insertion of 5% for non-recoverables. There's also, the pictures also show the breezeway between the buildings. I don't think it's counted in the space, though. I think they just added up the floor plan of the two older buildings. It's not heated.
Okay. Mr. Newfeld, I'm going to just bring this up right now, Tricia. So we've got a difference of 2,334 square feet. I think Mr. Newfeld said it's probably not the mezzanine. I don't think it doesn't appear you're assessing that. I think it might just be the mezzanine area. Maybe you can't answer it. I'm not sure, but
24, 160, and 26.
that's 2,334 square feet. So 2,300 square feet difference.
Maybe the residence, probably.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's both mezzanines. When we, last year with Ryan, I was asking, it wasn't with Ryan, it was with, going back in time, Jennifer? No, before Jennifer. We went out there together and we did look at the measurements, and it was the disagreement on the mezzanine.
Okay, so would you agree it might be the mezzanine, or I'm putting you on the spot here? But,
I mean,
yeah.
probably.
As far as you know.
Yeah.
Fair enough, okay. Okay, sorry. Okay. Tricia, any questions of the appellant?
I just had one question. The 5% for non-recoverables, what kind of non-recoverables do you have in an owner-occupied property?
Well, they're not professionally managed, but they still spend money on looking after their property. They have clerical staff. They do financial statements. They have to get insurance. They have to pay me. They have to look after administering their utilities and taxes. They have to organize the maintenance of the building. I did mention that 3 years ago, they cleaned up their lot. That was quite expensive, discarding of all the racking and heaters. deal with the drainage issues. The building is 3 feet difference from the neighboring properties in elevation, so there's drainage issues. General maintenance.
Clerical staff, is that not for part of the business and not, I mean,
Well, some of it is, but you still have, I mean, I do a lot of work for nonprofits, and one of the things that I'm hearing a lot out of the nonprofits is they say that their staff are spending one person spending half their time just looking after a small building and all the needs in the building, and they can't afford it. And that's the case with most owner-occupied buildings. You have a staff member who's burdened with all these tasks. A professional would probably take less time doing it and have access to professionals to do the work. That's why people employ property managers, but it's generally a half person job to look after an owner-occupied site.
more questions?
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the appellant?
No.
Thank you. Maurice?
I just had a little, just to clarify on the mezzanine, you said one was the former residence. Did you talk about 6 feet high, this one?
Yeah.
Which is dead storage?
Well,
That's what the words you used.
Yes, I said is that the area that was set up as a residence,
Yeah,
it has 6 feet clear.
yeah.
And it's, the first time I came to inspect it was, it had been converted. You saw the pictures I took from the first time I was
Yep.
there. It had been converted to just dead storage. Because they
And the
couldn't-
other one
didn't
was
use
what?
it.
On the other mezzanine?
The other one is an open deck mezzanine.
Open deck?
Yeah, so it's racking.
Racking? Yeah, I saw the racking there. Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. So, where do you attribute the difference in square footage between the assessor?
It's just the mezzanines.
That mezzanine, the
The
rackets?
two of them. I think
Storage? Yeah.
one's at 1,400 feet and the other's 1,200 feet.
Okay.
I was just looking to see if I had any notes on that. Cameras aren't on, they're not watching me back at assessment, but I appraised this property once, went for the estate because the owner had passed away, and so they were doing a transfer, so I did a fairly detailed appraisal of it.
Okay.
I think we had 1,200 and 1,400.
And so, I guess it was in the picture package that you sent around to us.
Yeah, I can point out with
Yeah, so it's used for storage of part of the
Yeah, but-
industrial.
Right, they'd be better off to remove it and increase their rack heights for their storage, because now what they're doing, in the past what they've been doing is they had this work area where they would bring in the old surplus units and convert them. Now they're having them built somewhere else and they're storing them on site, so they'd rather have racking today than that space. And nobody wants to live there.
So I know you're fast at this, but how would you like to do a calculation at $5 a square foot? You mentioned that you would be comfortable between $4.50 and $5.
That's
so-
true. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
We're timing you.
I take a lot of... that would change my NOI to 105, 241.
Still sticking with your cap rate?
I really have no choice on that matter. It's a difficult situation for me to be in because I've witnessed what's on the site, and I know that they've got problems lurking around the corner, but no one's reported it yet. Now I'm on camera telling the whole world about it, but it's not avoidable.
Okay, so I'm getting a value of $1,238,000?
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Okay, and last question regarding the cleanup of the contamination. Is there still contamination issue, or is that
It
done?
hasn't been tested.
Hasn't been tested, but it was remediated.
No,
Couple
no,
of-
no,
no.
the surface material was removed.
Surface material, okay.
Yeah, okay, the problem with kerosene is it's going to go down to a level of, I don't know, I think 20 or 30 feet, and it's got a half-life that's incredibly huge. So it depends what the new usage could be on it. It's a hydrocarbon, so there's different rules for hydrocarbons. They used to bring them all to a burning facility in St. Agathe, and they'd burn the soil and then have to replace it all. Venting, I don't think is a reasonable option, because venting would be, like, you do that with methane. If you leave it as it is, there's a new process that they keep talking about, which is basically just harrowing it under it every year, going and moving the soil. The CIL plant in East Selkirk has done that, and they feel that they've cleaned up all their TNT on it, but
So is your cap rate at 8.5 reflecting the stigma of that?
it's reflecting the requirement for going to a phase 2 and having to deal with the problem and the financial repercussions of anyone with an impacted site.
Okay, and it's listed on the,
No, it's not.
it's not, okay.
They don't get around to all of them.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Tricia, any requirement for summary?
No.
Okay, thank you. Rocky, you good?
No, you helped me out there, thanks.
All right, you're welcome. Wasn't my intention, but
Speed me along, do what you gotta do.
kidding. Just trying to get to the truth. Okay. Next property in the docket is 489 Oak Point Highway. And we're dealing with a 2020 Realty appeal. Ms. Caldwell, when you are ready, please.
Okay. Rule number 140-9999-1900. The rule year is 2020. We have an assessed value of $3,714,000. The property is built of four buildings. We have an effective year of 1986. Wall heights from 17 to 24 feet. It's zoned C3 commercial corridor. We have a land area of 314,150 square feet. Plan area of 48,810 square feet, giving a land to plan area, of 6.44. This is an owner-occupied property, so there are no subject leases. And you'll see some exterior photos on page 3. And an overhead view on page 4. On page 5, we have our cap rate chart with 60% of our cap rates falling between 6.34 and 7.80. And on page 6 is our income workup. We have a leasable area of 59,193 square feet, broken into 4 different premise IDs, and the overall rent is $4.45. Vacancy loss at 3.5%, expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, cap rate of 6.5%, giving our total assessed value of $3,714,000. And then I have some rental comparables on page 7. These are in the same market region with similar wall heights, and I believe they're mostly the same construction, with rents from $3.95 to $6.80 to support our table rate. We ask the board today to confirm our value at $3,714,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Would you mind going through the pictures, or? Yeah.
On page 11, I have page 11. Oh, no, sorry. Page 10, I have some interior photos. I inspected it last cycle. So the first page there, you can see the front lobby and shipping office. This is the main floor. And page 11, you get into the shop photographs. Continuing through page 12. And 13. And 14 as well. Page 15, this is going on to the second floor. These are their offices upstairs. And page 16 is an area that was, I believe it's still being unused. They were using it for some storage. And page 17, that's their old lunchroom, which they have a nice new lunchroom. They no longer use that part. The bottom of page 17, parts service desk. And that is on the main, going back down to the main floor. 18, parts and storage warehouse. 19, in there. And I think that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor's
Yes.
presentation?
Just a few. So you inspected this, right? When you looked at this is for the last reassessment cycle, and do you remember what rent you applied to the Quonset hut?
I don't recall, no.
Okay, that it was $1 a square foot. It was just a nominal amount,
Oh, okay.
and I'm
To the
just
what was that?
$1 a square
To
foot.
the
Quonset hut. It's a fabric
A
Quonset
little
hut.
thing in the back.
quantum, okay.
Yeah.
And this time around, you're a fair bit higher.
Yeah, it appears so, yeah.
And you don't have any rents to support that, do you?
I don't.
No, I didn't think so. But is this all model generated, this work up on page 6?
Yes, it is.
I just find it so rare that we're not fighting over square footage in this building. We have in the past, so... okay. Were you aware that there's registration on the Manitoba Contaminated Database on this property?
No, I was not.
Would that affect an opinion of value, do you think?
Yeah, it could, yeah.
Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
I was thinking to do math myself, but what was your average rent per square foot?
Sorry, it was $445.
445?
Yes.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Maurice?
Yeah, I was interested in the height of the mezzanine. Do you have that information? I was looking for a picture of it, and I didn't see one, unless I missed it.
Well, if
There's
you
two
look,
mezzanines in there, so
if you look,
If it helps us move along, I'm going to agree with their income numbers,
oh.
if that helps you. You can still ask questions.
Well, it's just I was looking to try and understand, because I don't know what was, I haven't looked at yours, so
No,
I don't know what you were challenging.
okay, so page, let's see. You look at just the second page offices on page 15. I mean, I can't tell really from a photo how, a wall height, but the the wall heights, when we report wall heights, it doesn't consider the second floor wall height, but it's,
So the
Their
mezzanine one
office
would
mezz-
be in there somewhere?
pardon me?
The mezzanines would be in there somewhere?
Oh, this is the mezzanine.
Oh, that is?
Yeah, the
Oh,
office.
okay.
The office portion, and there's, the vacant portion at.
Okay. Because you didn't mention that it was the mezzanine.
Oh, I
so
apologize. Sorry.
Okay, that's all, Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the Quonset area, what is that on these, on page 6? Is that 32 units square feet?
I believe so. Let me just check.
I think that's the smallest one. Offices.
Yeah, that's correct.
Quonset, that follow up what Mr. Neufeld said. So Mr. Neufeld, you're agreeing with the potential rent at 263,508? that what you said?
I
Yeah?
I'll
Okay.
explain it. It's
Okay.
not that hard.
All right. Okay, and I have no other questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thanks. Yeah, again, I didn't do this workup, and the mezzanine space, obviously the last one, it wasn't rentable. This one, it is rentable. The front office mezzanine, although it's not separately demised, it was built as a two-story building, and the back mezzanine is part of a rental unit that was made there, and it is legal and has the right ceiling heights. So that's why we're agreeing with it. And obviously, the person who wrote this up has never been in the building. So I think that the assessor's workup is fine. We disagree with the Quonset hut rent, but it's such an inconsequential amount that I don't think it's worth arguing over. The number I'm going to use for NOI is just subtracting 5% for non-recoverables, which comes out to 228,716. My non-recoverable number at 5% is 12,714. 228,716, and the property is on the list. I handed that out earlier. It's I think when we were talking about the impact of this on our property, you'd have to look at, if you have a really bad located property with all sorts of problems and it's got a listing and maybe you got an impact residential nearby, it can hurt you more. This one will have less of an impact on the saleability of the property because it's in the middle of the trucking neighborhood, and so the alternate uses will be trucking. Again, it's going to be the disadvantages of the financing. So I still think a number in around 8.5% is reasonable, which would give me a value of $2,690,776, rounded to $2,691,000. And again, if you're going to have a contaminated property, this would be a better one to have simply because of where it is.
Okay. Okay. Tricia, any questions of the appellant?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the appellant?
Sorry, why was this on the list?
I imagine it's probably its history of oil.
Oh.
It's always been a heavy engine repair site. So, and I don't know for 100%, but I believe there was buried tanks and waste oil on the site.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, any questions?
Trying to figure something out here.
Yeah, me too. Take your time.
Yeah, I found this trick. Don't use your phone to calculate. Use the calculator. It's
I know.
That's what I'm doing,
so
sir.
much quicker.
A big calculator or?
That's a pocket-sized calculator.
Yeah. There's a story behind this.
Oh,
whole
okay.
thing, so. There's a backstory.
I'm doing something wrong here, but the NOI that you use is 228
Yeah.
or 276?
716.
716.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I had come up with 229,359, but it's close enough, I guess. I don't know why. but-
And I was just looking at last year's order, and we didn't appeal it. Did you appeal it? Do you know? No, it was 8%, and we didn't appeal it. So I'm not, throwing an olive branch out here, but 8.5% is it still recognizes the impact, which in this case is say less so than the other properties we've heard of are on today.
Anything else, Maurice? You're still calculating?
So using is 228716 capped at either 8 or 8.5 is what you're talking about?
Yes, that's correct.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Anything else, Maurice?
Well, that's all, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
that's okay,
I never
no.
said anything.
So that would come to $2,859,000 rounded.
Yeah, in that range.
Okay.
Would be reasonable.
Okay. Here's my problem. I can't figure out your NOI.
Well,
Oh, I just took
numbers.
the assessor's NOI and took off another 5%
I'm
on
getting some-
potential. Are you using off the NOI or off the potential?
I'm working it all through. And
You got to take it off the number right after the vacancy.
that's what I did, but somehow I made
yeah.
254, 265 at 5%. That's what you got to use.
No, I was using,
EGI?
just let me go back, maybe I was reading the wrong paper.
Well, I was
Reading
trying to
wrong
figure that
standards.
out too, and that's where I was
Yeah,
doing different.
254, 285
Yeah.
at,
Which gives you 12,714.
yeah, that's what I got. And then all I took was 12,714, I subtracted it from 241,430,
Yeah.
and then I got 228,716.
Yeah, 228, 716.
Okay.
That's what it is, yeah.
All right.
Done nice and neat beforehand, would we save a lot of time?
Trying to get the picture from you.
Your revised picture.
This is all a trick, because Maurice always recalculates and looks for the error. This way, he can see if he can catch his error. It's
Well,
being clever.
None of us are perfect.
Oh, really clever.
Okay.
We catch one once in a while.
Yeah. Christian, did I ask you for questions?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Oh, that was me, right? Yeah, okay.
You're up.
Long word. I think that was my question, so. All right. We dealt with the contamination, or Marla did, yeah, okay. Okay, so that, any requirement for summary, Tricia?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Rocky, you good?
I'm fine.
Okay, that concludes 489 Oak Point Highway. Okay. The last one is 600 Goldsby Street, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Ms. Caldwell, when you are ready, please.
Okay, this is roll number 02062767000 for the roll number, excuse me, roll year 2020. We have an assessed value of $8,053,000. This is one-story building made up of 8 buildings in total. We have an effective year built of 1994. Wall heights from 11 to 21 feet. It's zoned M1. The land area is 221,862 square feet. Plan area is 122,700 square feet, giving the land to plan area of 1.81. This is an owner-occupied property. They're a manufacturer and distributor of HVAC products. I did not inspect the property this year. It was inspected the last cycle. On page 3, you'll see some overhead views of the property. And on page 4, we have our cap rate chart. Again, 60% of our cap rates fall between 6.34 and 7.80. And turning to page 5, we have our income workup. It's broken into three premises for a total of 122,700 square feet. And we have a rent of $5.25. That is an override rent. Vacancy loss at 2.5%. Expenses at 2%. A shortfall rate of $3.75. Cap rate of 7.5%, giving us our estimated value of $8,053,000. On page 6, I have some rent comparables. Again, for a large site like this, I have to go outside of the subject area and neighborhood to find larger properties. So they're all industrial warehouse properties ranging from approximately 80,000 square feet to 161,000 square feet, with rents between $5.17 up to a high of $8.15 to support our rent of $5.25. We asked the board to confirm our value at $8,053,000.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Cole, would you mind going through the photos, please?
Oh, you know what? I can't. I'm going through the photos that I took from the photo bank in the office. I don't. So I can't really speak to the photos and the different areas. I apologize for that.
So this was done by a previous assessor
Yes.
during a previous inspection, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, so you have 2 years built, 1959 and 2015.
Yep.
Do you know which sections they are in the photographs?
I could not tell you.
Okay.
No.
But it is fair to say that it was an old 1959 building, and then there was
Right.
another space added onto it.
Yes.
Now, in your, I'm just wondering, the sale, sworn consideration, sworn value is $1. Do you actually have that transaction?
No.
You don't, was there not a previous transaction? Isn't that an internal sale?
I don't know anything.
Okay.
Typically, I don't look at a sale.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Is this not part of a larger production facility? at 634 Raleigh, and can't remember the other address. This is a 3-roll property, production facility, or do you know anything about that?
I don't know.
Okay. On page, you talk about the valuation, page 5, and you said there was an override for 525?
That's correct.
Well, what was the model, higher or lower prior to that?
I'm not sure,
Okay.
to be honest.
Now, why are there 3 premise IDs? Isn't this just all one large property?
I imagine that when they added on the new building, it got a different rent.
But if
I don't know. I can't I
Okay.
can't speak. I didn't look that far into it. Why it has different.
If it had been coded as one building, 122,700 square feet, would the value have been different?
Yes.
And on land plan area, would you consider this to be below typical properties?
It is. Yes.
Are there any of your rents on page 6 that you're going to tell us you're not relying on before I ask?
Oh. No.
Okay, well, the first one, Redwood, I'm just wondering if you're aware that it has never been relied upon due to the conditions of the lease. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No.
Okay. And 630 Kernahan, there was a dispute the other day on this particular rent, whether it was a semi-gross rent or a net rent, and I'm just wondering if you're aware that that building only has one electrical connection.
Oh, you know what? I did hear about this yesterday. The 630 Kernahan.
Yeah, okay.
And that is a gross rent. It is on a semi-gross.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
there was a funny story that the other assessor said, which I knew he was making up, but, okay.
I didn't hear the story portion
Yeah.
of it. But okay, so 630 Kernahan is not a good comparable,
No, okay, and
as well as 1345
1345 Redwood,
Redwood.
that's the Boeing site.
Right, and what was
Well, it's just that I know that in the past, when we've taken it to appeal, that both parties have agreed not to rely on it because it was undue pressure that was the only building available for Boeing. They needed a building that they could get right away and composites.
okay?
It was consensual, both parties. I just, okay. Now, is 51 Burmack, isn't that an owner-operated property, or it has been in the past?
It came up as a net lease. I did not look into the particulars
Oh,
of the
okay.
lease.
All right. I should have checked earlier. We didn't have it as an owner-operated, but okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
You said sorry, it was a while ago now, you made a comment about the rent at 525. Sorry, was that?
Right.
I can't remember what you had said.
Oh.
Was it override? Sorry.
It is an override.
Okay.
Whether or not it was the table rate, model rate was higher or lower, that was the question, and I'm not sure. My guess is some of them were higher, and my guess is, judging on the different areas, is they were all different rents, and somebody put one rent on all premises.
Oh, okay. That's what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my question.
Thanks. Maurice?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I don't think I have any questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. This is Price Industries. They make heaters, usually rooftop units. And this is part of a larger complex. They have 3 titled properties. And actually, I don't have the third one listed in here. The other one is 230,000 feet. So, but there's another one on here that they recently acquired next door. So they have a minimum of 359,000 square feet on 3 separate titles. This was due to an expansion of their business, and the property was next door. They did purchase it. It used to be Wilson Auto Electric. My involvement began when I was hired by Price to help them value Wilson for the purpose of buying it. That's why I asked the question about why isn't the sale on it, because I knew it was an open market sale, but there was an assemblage issue to deal with. So they had to, they were expanding, and it was a better business decision to buy the property next door and convert it than it was to find a new site somewhere else, because there aren't a lot of 400,000 square foot buildings around when you really need one. We're valuing it on the basis of the entire complex. We can look at it as by itself. It'll make a minor change, but we think that the entire economic unit should be valued. This is under appeal at the municipal board, and on that basis, we have to look at the entire complex. It's interesting that we didn't have problems with the other parts of the complex, 634 Raleigh. It was just this building, and I imagine it was the concept of making an addition on a building. It doesn't make it worth more money. If you look at the site, it's a triangle-shaped building on a triangle-shaped lot that abuts a residential area and is part of a larger complex. Page 2 shows the larger complex. Now, I mentioned that they purchased another building, and that's the one that's north of Raleigh. That's not labeled, so they've got that space as well. What we were looking at is on my page 3 is that there's several rents at the bottom of the page. You can look at rents in the 100,000 square foot plus all the way to 355. We'll just briefly go through some of them, going from the bottom up. 630 Kernahan. This rent has expired, and this unit did end up being re-subdivided, but it was 355,000 square feet that was in effect from 2012 to 2017. 770 Pandora was only a 1-year deal, and that tenant has moved on. It was a series of 1-year deals. That's the last one on it at $3. 1821 Wellington, I told you about earlier, still in there, buys and transport. They wrote the wrong rent down. It's $250, and they have rail access in the old Eaton's warehouse. 1093 Sherwin is Reliance Plastics, and they renew it 2 years at a time. The last renewal was at $295 a square foot. Probably putting the greatest weight on that because they're a manufacturer as well. 1821 Wellington is at the Park and Fly at $2. The next one at 1450 Mountain was the City of Winnipeg rent of 138,000 feet. There was extensive renovations done on this property. It used to be a single tenant, and it was turned into a multi-tenant. 680 Mission is another plastics company, and they take short extensions. The last rent we had was at $350. This one, the COW means it was applied by the City of Winnipeg. I have a bad memory. I remember strange things. It's run by the guy who's the honorary consulate for Sweden. That's the name of can't remember the name of the plastics company. And that's another interesting one for our use as well at $350 because it's part of a larger complex, and he's got several thousand more square feet there. And then going up, we have the old one, which we've discussed at Fife, which is a superior property, and I accept the assessor's new number. And we have another one in 630 Kernahan, which I believe is still in there, and it expired at the end of 18 at $286 a foot. So those are the ones we were looking at. So on its own, with 122,000 feet, were it separately, not part of the larger complex, you may want to consider a higher rent, but then you would also have to deal with all the shortcomings on the site, such as the very poor land ratio. Because they operate with the 20 acres next door, they take advantage of that for their maneuvering space. So there's an advantage for them to be operating together on one hand, and on the other hand, the overall large size of it would indicate a lower rent. So it's a balancing act, which is why we went for the $3. Well supported, I think, by Sherwin Road and the other examples. We were looking for the 5% again. Now, the 8.75% cap, in this particular instance, is an entirely different issue, which for me is just kind of like a point of principle. I don't understand why this is going on. On page 5 is a excerpt from the city's parameters for Furniture Park, and this is the cap rate that the city applied to the buildings and the Palliser buildings in Furniture Park, 8.75% for all of them. And they're basically across the street from here, and they got nice square lots. And they're large size. This one's 253,000 square feet. So we on the principle that what's good for one should be good for the other, we're concerned about that number. But in terms of actual cap rates, there are some interesting ones on page better be in there. Yes, page 34. Excuse me. On page 34, starting with the fourth one down, 1535 Seal. This is another manufacturer, make windows, and it's in Fort Garry. This was the owner bought the business and leased the property, and then he ended up buying the building. The reported cap rate out of that transaction was 8.29%. 100 Paquin was a rental by Temro, and it was sold to my client at 8.47%. Temro ended up going bankrupt, but at the time the 8.47 stood. Moving down two more, 51 Aikens, inferior location, inferior building. I'm not disputing that, but they made the same style heating equipment as the subject does, their competitors. This is ICE, and they capped at 11%. Those are the ones I wanted to point out for your attention, we're very, very far apart, and I'm really hesitate on posturing because it doesn't get you anything in the long run, but we're going to be quite stubborn on this. And I know that boards, generally, they see the previous year's assessment, they say, oh, you take it to the municipal board, go fight it out there, don't bring it to us. That's what you say, that's what you say. But we know we're in the right here. Like, you got a big building, part of a big complex, and the $5 doesn't fit at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, any questions of the appellant?
Just had on page 3 of your brief in your comparables, the 680 mission that you got from the City of Winnipeg that expired in 2016. That was a 1-year lease.
Yeah, that's correct. We have an updated rent from Mission, and after that, and because our office did a deal in there, so it's consistent with this. I don't have it with me.
Okay, but a more recent rent of that space would be $4, I think.
No, because we did the deal. It's in the 3s.
No, it's in the 4s. I have copy here.
No, we have the deal sheet.
Okay, but
Did the deal.
okay, but I have their income and expense where they have reported a $4 rent on that space.
I'm gonna I could use my phone and look up the deal sheet, but that would be too risky at this point. I have it in my emails. We did the transaction.
Okay. Well,
It's in the threes, and I want to say 375.
according to the mailer, it's $4. So
Okay.
that's all I'm saying.
Well, it's not 525 though.
No, it's not. And then going to page 34, in your cap rates, you were talking about 1535 seal. Was that expropriated?
After the sale.
It was expropriated
There
after
was
the sale.
a yard of, no, it was a couple of meters of land, and the front of it was expropriated.
Do you know who the buyer was?
Yes. Buyer was, we met yesterday, Richard Brodeur.
Okay. Yeah, we have no record of the sale.
Oh, well, it probably went through titles a couple of times because when you have an expropriation, they have to issue a new title, and I don't know if it got. You might have to find the historical, but
Okay. So after expropriation, it was on the open market?
no. They did the purchase in at the date I had there, and then it was expropriated. I think a year or two later. They weren't aware that it was coming.
So it sold before the expropriation?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Cobalt. Marla, any questions of the appellant?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Maurice?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, okay. Okay, Mr. Neufeld. So this is part of a complex.
Yes.
What's the advantage of not merging it? Or have they ever requested a merge? Like, I think that's where you're going. Is
Yeah.
That should be all considered one property.
I think in this case, there's really only one disadvantage on the merge. I think we have common ownership in that we would like to control the date that it happens, because if we have a disagreement over value, let's not necessitate additional appeals. And that's the only reason I caution people not to do a merge. If we went to the city and said, hey, could you for January 1st, 2020 do a merge and issue it on June 4th, I think we would readily agree to it. But it's all these excess fees like on it.
Okay, I guess, so your argument is that you're comparing, there's three separate assessments on three separate
Correct.
buildings? Are you saying they aren't all assessed equally, or?
No, because 634 Raleigh, I don't have the number at my fingertips, but it's down in a fair bit lower than this property, quite a bit lower.
The value or the rent per square foot?
Both the rent and the value.
And the cap rate's the same? If you're aware of.
Do you know? You get sworn in. 634 Raleigh. Well, we appealed Goldsby, but we didn't appeal Raleigh. Raleigh's rent was, you can't answer the question because you're not under oath. If you know the answer, you can go under oath and say it. No, because it was a lower number. It was only Goldsby that was too high. Okay, fine, you're no good.
The reason I ask is you're asking for parity, I guess, between the three properties?
We're looking,
or just the total value?
We're looking, I think we're going to be consistent. We want it expressed as one economic unit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that these aren't really hard and fast numbers, or we say it's got to be this or whatever, but we're so far apart because the concept of 525 versus the $3 range is we're at least $2 apart on the rent.
Okay, my last question. So the assessor provides comparables similar in size, 100,000 square foot plus, and her average rent, or her comparables seem to support the assessment at $550 a square foot, whereas yours are way down $2 less. Or you're asking for $3
Well-
a square foot, is it?
And I have nothing unpleasant to say about our assessor today, but I do have some things unpleasant to say about their formula, their system for doing these. I said this earlier, when we bring in the deals here, with the exception of the ones that are marked in bold, they're ones that we've done the deals on ourselves. So we have the leases, we have the broker's notes, or the landlord's notes, and we make sure that they're clear of any other influences. If, for example, someone leased a property and got $1 million in TI to do an improvement, would you use that as a comparable? Some people would say, let's adjust it. We would just say, no, we're not going to use it, period, because it's misleading. And when we did this list up, that was our goal. It was just to have clean leases.
My last question is, this particular property, it's got an age variant of 1994, so this building has had new additions added on in
Yep, that's
2015?
correct.
Yeah, so it is newer construction, a blend of new and old,
It's
I guess.
a blend of new and old, and the old was
1959.
yeah. It was a low ceiling building. You see the assessor's wall heights, for example, 11 feet and 21 feet. So the old was 11 feet, and the new was 21 feet.
So on a ratio, how much is new and how much is old? Line area.
The tall part is new, the short part is old.
So
I'm just being sorry. I'm just
Oh, makes sense. Okay.
So it kind of looks like 50% of it is new, or 40 or something. I'm looking at the pictures, the assessor's pictures.
the square part is new,
Yeah.
a rectangular, and the odd shaped part is old.
Okay.
So it's going to be about 60-40
Yeah,
for old.
60/40. Okay. Okay, so quite a bit of it is new. Yeah. Okay. Hence the age variant, right?
Yeah.
Or effective age. Pardon me. Okay, that's my only question. Requirement for summary,
No.
Ms. Caldwell, Mr. Neufeld.
Just briefly, I wanted to remind everybody earlier about the rebuttal information I showed you on capitalization rates. And one of the things I wasn't really spending much time on is the concept of capitalization in industrial. There is a massive difference between manufacturing cap rates and the rates that are often seen in the market, which are glorified office space, flex warehouse. We're not dealing with any of those today. We've got hard-working places, working places. So the manufacturing rates are significantly higher for that, because investors aren't as interested in industrial, real industrial.
Okay. That concludes our hearing. Thank you both for appearing. And you're done, Kelsey. Thank you.
So is that the